This segment has been funded by a partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and the South Dakota Specialty Producers Association to promote sustainable agriculture and environmental stewardship. Again, my name is Christine Reiner. I'm the communications coordinator.
So just to get into it, yeah, I work with the Minnehaha Conservation District. Conservation districts, they're nationally recognized, and they work with people throughout the different states. And what we do is we provide conservation services throughout the county. And there should be a conservation district in every county in South Dakota where you can go and we can help you do conservation planning and some additional stuff. In Minnehaha County, we do pollinator plantings. We do a variety of other conservation services. So we're a resource that you can utilize if you're looking to do any kind of conservation work in your yard or on your land.
Yeah, and they are extremely helpful. I mean, they've got so many partnerships with so many different community sectors. There's a lot for me to still learn. So, I'm always intrigued by your pollinator packets that you guys do.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I'm like, how did I miss the window for ordering that? So can you kind of tell us about that project?
Yeah, so the pollinator, so we have prairie and pollinator garden kits that you can order. And what they are is it came from a partnership with the city of Sioux Falls. We had been getting a lot of feedback of people wanting to do pollinator plantings, but if you're ordering seed for a smaller area, you might not be able to, it's not the most affordable or logical way to go and, buy an acre of seed for a 100 square foot plot. And so there are a lot of people saying it's not very economical trying to do this. There were some people who needed some additional educational resources for it. And so we're like, why don't we just try to make something as affordable and as simple for people as possible? And so what our kit includes is we have a sign, because one of the things that sometimes people deal with is they have neighbors being like, oh my gosh, my neighbor just is letting their whole entire yard going to weeds. And we wanted it to be educational so people can see like this is intentionally done and there's thought being done with it. And then we have a guide in there that kind of goes through maintenance, planting, everything for you to know how you can go about getting a garden started and maintaining it. And then we also have a seed packet, and we developed it with the city of Sioux Falls to make sure that we're not having any zoning issues regarding the height that some of the vegetation can get within a pollinator space. And also we wanted to make sure that it was true South Dakota natives, because there are a lot of native mixes out there that claim to be native, but you have to check and see like, okay, is it Midwest native? Is it Pacific native? All this kind of stuff, because you might get a native mix and it could be native to California and you're in South Dakota. It's not necessarily conducive to the environment. So.
Right, and that little that little mess up can kind of affect you for a long time if it's very invasive. So, I want to stay on track here because I got several questions that pop into my head as you're talking. But just to start off, what are some specific example of plants that are native to South Dakota that maybe some of our viewers have heard of?
Well, so I know like within our packet, and so blanket flower is a native. We have purple prairie clover. There is prairie cone flower, purple cone flower. Those are some of the ones that you can see. Our sage flower, the purple pasque flower, that's native. Black-eyed Susans are native to this area. There are certain types of sunflowers that are native to South Dakota. We have, milkweed and stuff is kind of like Midwest native. And so that would fall within kind of like the native plants of South Dakota as well. I'm trying to think of some other ones just off the top of my head here that are really good. Like Joe Pye weed, we have a lot of people plant that, and that's technically native here as well. And then let's see here, yellow coneflower. So all of the coneflowers, you can just have a coneflower garden if you want. But those are some of the basic ones that you can go through that are native here to South Dakota that are pretty easy to implement and find at some of your local nurseries and things like that.
Ooh, a coneflower garden. Don't tempt me. It's always like, is there room?
Right.
That's it's so incredible what you can learn once you just start researching these simple things and like knowing what to look for.
Yes.
What would be like the best advice you could give someone just starting out?
If you're just starting out, the biggest thing when you're planting a pollinator area is you need to make sure that the existing vegetation has been killed off. And so it's a longer process than one would think. So time management when you're trying to implement that is really something you should be thinking about. Another thing a lot of people don't think about is, so you'll kill the top layer, but then they'll go in and they'll rake up a little bit to, plant. And then some of those seeds that were buried under a few inches of soil, those will now be growing weeds. So you may want to go and rake up the soil a couple of times and work on killing off those weed seeds as well to really make sure that you're not having a lot of competing vegetation going into planting your pollinator area. The other thing that I really think you need to just be aware of is it's not going to be the prettiest necessarily looking spot the right away. Luckily with pollinators like wildflowers and things like that, those will tend to grow in pretty quickly. But when you're doing a pollinator garden, a lot of times you're doing it with a mix of some native grasses, and native grasses do take a little bit of time to really establish. And so those are a couple of things. And I would recommend native grasses because although native flowers tend to have deeper roots, native grasses will also help with like the soil erosion concept that of why you're kind of putting in some of those pollinator areas as well.
Yeah, exactly. You're like leading into my next questions. I was gonna say, what are some of the benefits? But
Oh, there's so many benefits for implementing a pollinator area. So specifically, just like even like a yard area. So again, helping with soil quality. The roots are helping go in, and it helps with water penetration, and then it also helps with soil retention. So you're not having as much erosion. As far as pollinator areas, it's attracting pollinators, which is good because you're going to want to be having them pollinate. And if you are like a specialty producer or things like that, you are wanting to attract pollinators to your garden because pollinators have been linked with various additional effects for agricultural land. So you're going to see additional yields. Typically, pollinators are linked to having greater seed production of certain plants. And then you're also usually seeing a better quality product if you have pollinators and insect pollinators pollinating your plants. You will oftentimes see um, just a better yield. Like strawberry plants, there's been a lot of studies about that where they talk about how strawberry quality, you can go up a grade sometimes just by having insect pollination, stuff like that. Yeah.
so companion planting with your native pollinators will really help your yield for your garden, whether
Yeah,
you're residential or commercial.
for sure. That will definitely help. Having pollinators around is never a bad thing. And then depending on what you're specifically producing, like if you're a honey producer, planting certain plants obviously is going to change the flavor of the honey. So if there's a certain nectar you're looking for, you having certain plants there, you're going to get maybe a better quality honey, different things like that.
Oh, it got me so excited for spring. like, like no more snow. I'm getting so excited for bees. Um, and we talk about pollinators, but maybe for somebody who doesn't know, what is kind of like what's the group of pollinators we want, and what's the group of maybe predators we don't really want to attract?
So the group of pollinators that you're really looking for, I mean, obviously bees tend to be native bees. You're going to be wanting to look for native bees. Honeybees obviously do help, but they are non-native. Native bees tend to um, be more widespread and are things that you are insects that you're wanting to attract. And then something like, especially if you're looking like at crops, you're wanting to look at what size bees tend to be the ones that are pollinating certain crops that you have. So, like blueberries, different things like that, medium to large bees, but there are some crops like squash where they are preferential to larger bees. So you're wanting to look and see if you can have those bees get attracted. And then, um, you know, I'm trying to think here, like strawberries, medium bees, different things like that. And if you want to rephrase the question, because I'm sitting here, I want to make sure that I've fully answered what you just asked me as I'm like getting off on a tangent there.
No, no, you are doing great. I love tangents. I do tangents myself. Um, but I guess the one part I still have a question on is like, what do we not want to attract?
We don't want to attract, I mean, into your garden, you never want to attract like aphids, various specific predators for certain things. So, like squash beetles, if you have a squash garden, you're not wanting to attract them. And the nice thing is most pollinator plants don't tend to attract a lot of the predators except aphids. Aphids are just kind of like the most difficult pests to deal with, but there are certain plants that you can intermingly plant with pollinators, or specific pollinator plants that you can plant that are not as conducive to aphids, or they'll attract predators of aphids, and that's something that you can consider. So like black-eyed Susans tend to attract predators of aphids, which is awesome. And then purple prairie clover is kind of just one of the greatest plants you can plant in a pollinator area. As far as native plants go, they are attracting a lot of predators for some of those insects that you're not wanting. Bees love them. It attracts a lot of medium and large size bees, which is what you're going to be needing for a lot of your, food. And they're just, they have a fairly decent length of time that they're in bloom. So they're just, I kind of am like, that should be like your number one, like gold star. Like this should be the one plant. If I take nothing else away, this should go into my garden. So
Let's say it again. What one was it?
purple prairie clover. You want purple
Purple
prairie clover
prairie
very
clover.
badly. Yes.
Very badly. That one
Yes.
is your MVP. It's gonna help with so many
Yes.
different things. So we've got our purple prairie clover in our mind. What are the next steps you would suggest to somebody who's just starting out?
Okay, so if you're just starting out, I think something to consider too is your space. You got to think about what size area that you're planting in. So if you're planting in a larger field versus if you have a very small area. So like I do a lot of work with urban production. So I'm typically, dealing with maybe like a quarter acre farm or something like that where someone's wanting to do some production. And so it might look a little bit different how you're going to be implementing these pollinator areas. So, if you have a larger space, you might want to do it in pockets, or you might want to create a wildflower field, something of that nature. If you're working in smaller production, raised beds you can grow wildflowers in. You can do container gardens and things like that. You just have to be really thoughtful of what their root lengths are going to be when you're going to be planting them in containers so that you have them deep enough. And so you can make raised beds a little bit deeper to accommodate some of those roots, but that's a good way to have some of those pollinator areas without having to utilize as much space. Or again, like if you're using a raised bed, you can do it stilted and you're not taking up really any ground cover for what you're planting. And so that I guess would be kind of another step. And then it's just kind of picking out your plants. I think it's really important to consider seasonality when you're planting, making sure you have coverage throughout the year so you have viable habitat for pollinators from spring all the way to fall. And so, there's certain plants that are really good where they, once they come in, they're in through fall, but there are some that have like shorter bloom periods. And so that's something that's really necessary to consider.
Right, and so it kind of sounds like you're also talking about cover cropping during the winter to protect those habitats.
I mean, I'm never going to not endorse cover crops and other soil health practices because that's all stuff that we are, actively trying to make sure that people are utilizing because they're out there for a reason. They are going to help with your overall production, and it's going to increase the health of your fields when you implement them. You might not see it immediately, but over time, you're going to see significant um, differences in what your soil is going to look like and just in general how your production is going to go.
Mm-hmm. I'm, to kind of talk about challenges or common misconceptions that somebody might face when they're starting out. Do you have any advice for somebody who might not know? We get that the growing process is a little less pretty. It's going to take a little bit longer. But are there any other expectations like upkeeping the nutrients, or since they're native, are there less upkeep things needed?
Yeah, so in general, because they are native and you're looking at perennials and things like that, there is less upkeep in general with native gardens. They happen like once you get them established, I will say that. So when you're getting them established, you should treat them like any other garden. You have to be watching, the water, is the soil getting too dry until they're starting to establish. And so we've talked with people before, you really want to be monitoring pretty heavily for the first couple of months that you plant them. And then after that, just some general maintenance. I mean, if you have an extremely dry year, you may want to water it a little bit like you would anything else, but you're not going to be necessarily needing to water them because they tend to be a lot more drought tolerant than your average, non-native plants, especially because they are used to this landscape. So they are going to be used to the weather patterns that tend to affect the area. Another thing when you're trying to get them established is really watching for weeds. And the funniest part though is like we had to establish some resources because we ourselves, when we did our pollinator kits, we're like, yeah, we probably should have done a little bit more education on that. As a lot of people aren't used to what native plants look like when they're starting to spread out. They're like, oh, it's a weed. And then they pull it out and it's like, oh, you just killed your flower. So that's something, just to
Guilty.
make sure. Yeah, I guess that would be another thing. Just make sure you know what the plants look like. And we do have a resource available on the Minnehaha Conservation District website under our pollinator kits that you can look at a lot of the common native plants that are in the area and see what they look like when they're just sprouting versus what they're going to look like when they're in bloom, so that you have a better idea when you're weeding. Maybe like don't pull that one because that probably is a flower that we should be keeping and it's not, some kind of invasive weed that might be killing off the vegetation I want.
Yeah, I'm very visual, so I'm on the website trying to find some
If you
photos
go
of
to our resources tab,
the resources.
underneath pollinator kits, there is going to be a link that you can click on, and that's going to take you to a resource that kind of goes through what some of those pollinator plants are going to look like.
Are you okay if I share my screen?
That's totally fine.
Okay. So this is I went to the Minnehaha conservation.org, and if you go to the resource tab here, not only can you see all the newsletters and the great things that they're working on, down here they have furry and pollinator garden kits. And then they also have native plant stages for growth, which this is, amazing. This is such a good resource.
Yeah, and we've been trying to share that that we have that resource available, and it's not necessarily done through us. It's from another group that they've established because again they were looking for resources. A lot of people were, and so they're constantly adding additional plants to it. That people are like, I would really like to see what this looks like because I feel like I pulled half my plants out while I was weeding it.
Yeah, Google Lens only helps so much. So this is really great. I actually have been fortunate enough to get a few pollinator packets from you that I've dispersed, and I kind of chaos through them, and so I didn't really expect much to happen, but I think they're blooming. I think I saw one bloom.
Yeah,
Um,
and they do bloom pretty fast. We were kind of surprised ourselves when people planted. Some of them planted pretty late last year, and in the fall they did have some blanket flower and stuff coming up. So that was pretty cool.
that is so cool, and it's effortless. You want to do as easy and low maintenance, and what could be better than a native plant to South Dakota that is going to help suck up the moisture? I mean, if you live in kind of a mushy swampland like Sioux Falls, it's definitely beneficial for your lawn. But here's kind of the kit. You have the planting guide booklet, a seed packet, and an educational metal sign and post. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's a pretty hefty post, and it comes with hardware to attach to the sign. And I believe that the post itself is 18 inches high, and then the sign adds another foot. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much you can put it into the ground to kind of stabilize it.
And that's just kind of a nice, like, this is a pollinator garden. Like,
Yeah, and we have our logo and we have the cities on there so that people also recognize when they see those two entities that you're doing this through properly correlated research, and it's not just you kind of being like, I'm just throwing some stuff here and seeing what happens. And because we have had people be like, I just want my neighbor to not just be like experimenting in their yard. And it's like, okay, well, that's not the worst thing that you can be doing, but we understand that at the same time, aesthetics wise, you want to make sure that people aren't just letting their yards go and creating pest problems and things like that. So
well, right, you're kind of creating a pollinator oasis, and so there's going
yes.
to be lots of, growth, and you don't want it to spread out. You want to be very neighborly and considerate of those around you.
Yeah, and I think that that's something else I would just say as some of the advice that I would give is, if people are coming to talk to you, do your best to just kind of meet them at a point of like educating them and just understand like that they might not have ever heard of a pollinator area potentially, or they might be completely foreign to the concept of a non-turf yard. And so that's something that just it's going to take a little bit of educating on to make them aware, this is why and this is the reason why I'm doing it. And then talk to them about it. And another thing we've talked about too is for some people, they've been worried that their neighbors' plants are going to spread into their yard. And so a way to help curb some of that worry is to add a little bit of an edge to your pollinator area. So we've talked about like just doing like a little bit of a wood chip border or something like that. If you're in a city area, that might assist with some of that concern as well.
Yeah, that city living, we've dealt with it. So Alina, I wasn't sure how you felt about questions, but we do have a question. Do you want to wait until the end, or do you want to answer now?
I can answer now. If it's relevant to what I've been talking about, that would make sense. So that's totally fine.
It's kind of a long one, so let me read it.
Okay.
Anonymous attendee. I'm a backyard vegetable grower. I put in a pollinator strip adjacent to my garden, planted some transplant from wild ones. Extraordinarily successful with the little maintenance, self-seeding now, and covered with bees and other pollinators. Never have I ever seen such a docile bees. Yes, yeah. I leave it up all winter, and the birds do feed on some of them, and it provides a good winter cover, seeds, catches the snow, and slowly melts back into my garden on a gentle slope. Just fantastic. I have purple prairie clover, coneflowers, columbine, cardinal flower, cup flower, several butterfly bushes, and more. Oh, I also collect seeds for future efforts around my yard and on my friend's wildlife and farm area. Okay, sorry, that wasn't a question, but I love it. I love I love that. I have a question from reading this. What is like a butterfly bush? Is that what it's called, or are there specific names to look up for those?
Okay, so I've actually had it where multiple people have been like, I have a butterfly bush, and then people had it in different ways. So, and then depending on the nursery you go to, sometimes it's a little bit different. So butterfly bush, as far as I know, tends to be a very specific plant that you kind of plant for that's supposed to help bring in butterflies. But there's also a concept where people plant in a certain way and create what they call a butterfly bush. So the answer to that is that both is an answer to that.
I like it. It's flexible. People can. What I've learned from gardening is you can take all the knowledge and the resources and the trial and errors that other people have done, but you're gonna find your own method that works for you. And so it kind of sounds like, if you prefer this or you prefer that, there's definitely customizable options. So thank you for answering that. I want a butterfly bush. I want that. But we've talked about, how to get started, what to do, what are good plants. What are some things that we don't want to do? What would hinder us when starting a pollinator garden?
If you're starting a pollinator garden, I'm trying to think of what would be the biggest hindrances that I can think of from all of the work that we do. Again, I cannot emphasize you need to kill existing vegetation. Because the amount of times people are like, oh, I did a good enough job. And they call it solarizing when you put plastic down and you trying not to use any kind of chemicals. And if you're solarizing, I think, again, really making sure you're putting in the time to do that and properly kill off that vegetation. Because there's people who've done it for like a couple of weeks and some stuff killed off, they planted it, and then they're having grass and weeds and a bunch of issues. And so I think just really making sure on the back end that you're doing what you can before you plant is the biggest way to get rid of a lot of those hindrances. I think the other thing that you're going to want to think of too is just, again, the seasonality of what you're planting. Try to avoid planting pollinator plants that are all going to bloom at the exact same time, because then you're just going to have no flowers out for a good chunk of the year. So trying to really check into some of those periods. And I can go through some of them if you would like for some of the more common ones if you're interested. Okay. So if you're looking to like do some coverage in spring, so you're going to want purple coneflower tends to be one of the earlier blooming ones. And then the purple pasque flower is probably the earliest blooming that I can think of here in South Dakota of some of the natives, because that will bloom as early as March if it's warm enough. And so you can sometimes see that, which is interesting. I know. I mean, this year maybe you could have seen some of it with how warm it was, and then the snow would have come in and maybe done some issues. But it can bloom pretty early in the spring. Purple coneflower is going to be one of your earlier ones. Some of your later ones are going to be like bottled gentian, comes in like more closer to fall. Some of the ones that are going to be in between in the summer, you're going to see in the summer will be like your yellow coneflower, which is I call it the most finicky coneflower. As far as the three go, it needs, a certain soil content, and it needs, a certain moisture content, where the other ones are a little bit um more tolerant. That one tends to be the diva, I guess, of the coneflower world. And then if you're like asters tend to be kind of, like in the middle of when they're going to be blooming. July is when a lot of your native plants are going to be blooming. So you're going to want to kind of do some of the ones that I mentioned for the earlier ones within your garden too. But once they bloom, a good chunk of your natives are going to stay in bloom through fall, which is nice. Blanket flower tends to stay for a really long time in bloom, which is awesome. Once it comes in, and that one I think is like more of like a May, June through like October is when you can see that around here. Uh, the purple prairie clover, again, that's going to be kind of like midsummer to like fall is when you're going to see that as well. And I can give you some more specifics for bloom periods. I have some. I went through. I've done presentations on this before, so I have written down a few of them. If you want like specific months, like Joe Pye weed, I'm looking at it right now, is like July through September. I don't remember the exact like this exact month for them, but I do know the ones where it's like I can tell you exactly if it's a summer one, if it's a fall one, if it's a spring one, or if it's kind of like spring, summer, summer, fall. So
Yeah, and so
hopefully,
we did get a few people join us. If you're now just joining us, we are talking about what good um, kind of blooms you can organize so that you have continuous blooms throughout summer, which will help your pollinators stay fed and in your garden stay pretty. So if you need, if we're going through a lot of information, I will share the link to both of the websites that I shared earlier. The Minnehaha Conservation District does a really great job in creating these pollinator packets, selling them. They even, you guys sell a lot of stuff because you do trees as well. You have so many different things.
yeah. I mean, we try. We're just trying to look at where those gaps are. It's like NRCS, they do a lot of amazing programs, and Pheasants Forever, we are a partner with them. Soil Health Coalition, all of these groups have all of these amazing projects and programs that you can do. And so what we try to do is see where are those areas that maybe people aren't doing as much conservation work or different things, and see where we can create those programs. So like for instance, we've done it to where NRCS can cover certain areas, but there's certain restrictions for the funding that they have and for people who are wanting to do certain conservation services. So sometimes we can get grants through us where we can help do, cost shares or different things through us if we see a need in the community. And we've done that for like shelter belt rehabilitation. We've done that for wildflower areas and some habitat stuff where we've been able to do a certain percentage of covering like the seed costs and technical assistance work.
That's so great. It's so great to have this resource. If somebody in the community is thinking about giving different practices on conservation or has questions, or maybe you just kind of want to get another set of ears on your plans, reach out to them.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. We're here to answer all of your questions and do what we can to assist. And if we don't have the resource for you, like I said, we work with a lot of partners, and we can kind of direct you to where you might need to go. So you're not sitting there Googling for hours wondering how to answer a question that may be a quick call to us. We can get to you very soon.
Exactly, and they're very nice people. You guys.
Thanks.
If you were to say there is no stupid question, I would actually believe you, because you would never make me feel stupid about any questions I have. So again, they're a really great resource. I also dropped a link in the chat that you can connect with them, go to their website. Once we post this on Facebook and our YouTube later this week, you can also contact Alina through her information. But Alina, I didn't disclose this in the pre-generated questions, but I do kind of want to talk about the community garden project you guys are working on?
Yeah, so that's going to be another educational resource for the community. We are working on getting it set up now. So hopefully in June, we can start making people aware of it and having some people come out and learn about it. And so it was established through a couple years of us kind of working to try to get a community garden space. But then what we wanted to also do is have there be kind of an educational, almost outdoor classroom type area where people can come and learn about various implementation practices that are available through NRCS and just some general good conservation work that you can do. So we're going to have different stations that you can come in. We'll have um, kind of a food forest built out, planted out there of trees and some shrubs. We're going to have a high tunnel out there so you can come and see what a high tunnel looks like, touch it, learn how it operates. We are going to have some raised bed gardens out there, pollinator areas, potentially a rain garden. We're going to have some turf examples out there. So if you're looking to just be like, I'm done with my lawn being turf and I would like to see what are some options, we will have some options out there for you to go and check out, as well as some other different vegetation options for if you're looking to just plant some native grasses or some pollinator areas throughout your operation or your yard. And so those are kind of the big highlights. We're going to also have like a soil health demonstration garden where what we're hoping to do is it'll be quadranted off and it'll show what the soil looks like just from, traditional tilling and work like that, then no-till, then no-till cover crop, no-till cover crop, rotational cropping. And then what we're going to be doing is soil sampling as time goes on to show how different the soil right next to each other is just based off of the practices that are being implemented with it. So we're pretty excited.
That's incredible. That's going to be very visual to say, hey, you doing these practices is not for nothing.
Exactly. And so we're
Yeah, you'll see the
I'm
benefit.
stoked. Like I mean I'd be like if I could do like a 2-hour talk on that place. I'm just going to be honest. I'm very excited about what we've created and what's going to be happening. And then we're going to want community input about it too. So if there's anything people are like, I really would love to see how this works, but I just don't have the capital to try to do this myself, contact us and be like, maybe we can experiment with it and see if it's something that we could get in. If you're nervous about implementing a low tunnel, maybe we can get a low tunnel out there. If you are wanting to know how to grow something in a high tunnel, we could try and grow it out there. If you're wanting to have certain things be in a raised bed that maybe aren't as conventional to be planted, we'll try it out. Worst case, it's an experiment, it's a learning lesson, and we can try it out and see how it works. So
Will there be community plots, or will it just kind of be, anybody can harvest, come by, look through?
yeah, so we'll have the education area, and that'll be we'll be growing stuff there, and people who would like come and assist with weeding or doing any kind of work out there would likely be able to also partake in any of the food that's being harvested out there. We would be also planning to donate some of the food that's there to like local food pantries, and Feeding South Dakota is what one of the plans is. And then as far as the actual community garden aspect, we will have plots available. I don't think we'll have them as early as June, but probably a little bit later for if you wanted to come and get a plot and plant in the fall. We'll have some logistics that we're still working out with that, but we'll have some plots that'll be possible for like rent that you can
Mhm.
have and then just come and have your plot. And we'll have water out there. We'll have a shed with tools. So it'll be a system where if you don't have anything, as long as you can get out there, you can garden if you'd like.
That is such a great resource, and I apologize for viewers. I don't know if we said this, but this will be located just outside of Sioux Falls, still very close inside of Sioux Falls, technically, but kind of on the outskirts.
It's literally on the road that is like the dividing mark between Renner and Sioux Falls. So
Yeah, it's a very cool area. I'm really excited to see the growth that you guys are going to do out there. And you said that we'll even have pollinator sections. So if you've carefully curated your lawn for a very long time and you're just a little hesitant about if you want to make the jump or not, you'll be able to go and visually see and understand exactly how it kind of lays out.
yeah, for sure. And that's kind of what our hope is because we're planning to put in, I think I have at least 3 mixes. We're waiting to hear if we can get a 4th one of and that would just be pollinator area with grasses and flowers, and we'll have 2 wildflower areas too. So you can come and kind of look and see what those look like and what those mixes look like as well, just to give you a little bit better visual before maybe you decide like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. It's some people really think things through. I'm not one of them, but some people, good on them. What is kind of this will be our last question, but what is the best advice you could give someone who's about to start a pollinator garden?
I have fun with it, but do your research. I think it's really important that you're doing your research, and I think it's important that you think as you're talking about, why do you want a pollinator garden? Are you wanting a pollinator garden for a certain amount of color in your yard, so then you can look and see what kind of varieties of pollinator plants, native plants are available, so that you have a variety of color in it? Are you doing it because you're wanting specific plants to attract certain insects, so that you're seeing maybe even more increased yields within your production? So, you might want to incorporate black-eyed Susans, purple prairie clover, milkweed, or different things like that, versus some of the other plants, depending on what your production is. Like, so also common yarrow is something that tends to be a favorite plant that you can kind of put in as well if you're interested, for trying to attract some pollinators, but also attract predators of some of the for aphids and certain other detrimental insects that might be coming into your operation. So that's something to think about. I'm kind of like pro trying to do a more natural approach to pest management. Unless you just have like a full-blown infestation, there's nothing you can do, because I feel like a lot of times on the back end, there's things that you can be doing to help be preventative without even realizing it, regarding just some of your planting habits that you do. So I think that's something to consider as well. So really, yeah, just why are you wanting the pollinator area? And then kind of picking your plants based off of that would be the best advice I can give you.
And some beneficial things, just to recap, are, make sure that the previous living plant has been eradicated, and then just companion planting is always a good idea to save stress. It is a little bit more research and a little bit more work, but again, we shared a link that they've done the hard work for you, and so you can go and you can read their newsletters and kind of get a much better view of, okay, this is why I should be doing this. So again, if you have any questions for Alina, you can reach out to the Minnehaha Conservation District. You can go onto that website we shared in the chat, or you can just reach out to me, email me, and I'll get you guys connected. But I want to thank you so much for your time, Alina. This has been so informative and just exciting. We need more bees, and this is this is going to help contribute to that. So everybody watching today, I really appreciate you and thank you for your time. Again, if you need any more resources, we're here. You can follow the South Dakota Specialty Producers on Facebook if you don't already. We've got several events coming up. But again, next week we are having our organic chapter meeting, which is a really exciting sector that we're getting resources into. So a little bit more education about how to be organic, how to get certified, and those kind of processes. So that's happening next week. If you need more information, again, follow our Facebook page. This segment has been funded by a partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and the South Dakota Specialty Producers Association to promote sustainable agriculture and environmental stewardship. Again, my name is Christine Reiner. I'm the communications coordinator. And if you need anything at all, please check out our website at sdspecialtyproducers.org. Thank you so much.